Hello, welcome back to the channel. I'm doing a video on Silas, Renn and Bruse Tarl. This is currently filmed at Dice Cup, which you should go and check out. So, what Silas Renn does is when he deals combat damage to an opponent, choose target artifacts in your grave, you may cast it this turn. It costs one generic, a blue and a black, and it also has that touch. It has Ponder, so I can have two commanders. The other one is Bruse Tarl, who, for two generic, a red and a white, when he enters or attacks, target creature you control gains double strike and lifelink until end of turn. He also has Partner. So the aim of the deck is to recur artifacts, whether it's through Silas's effect or through other means. So I'm going to start off with the lands. So I got Jukabog, which taps for a black, and when it enters, exile all cards from target player's graveyard. It's in here to slow down other graveyard decks, and it also helps get my commander because it just taps for a black. Next is Command Tower, which taps for any of my colors, just for 1 mana though. Next is Cavern of Souls. As it enters, I choose a creature type, which for the purposes of both commanders, it would normally be human. It can either tap for colorless, or I can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. It can only be used to cast creatures of the chosen type, and that spell can't be countered. So it's a nice bit of protection for these two, while against some blue decks. Next is Reliquary Tower. It's just in here for non-max hand size, just in case I draw too many. Next is some these next lands come into play untapped if I have 2 or more lands, and they tap for 1 of my 2 colors. So Silas Sanctum, which taps for white or black. Deserted Beach, which taps for white or blue. Stormcraft Coast, which taps for red or blue. And Shipwreck Marsh, which taps for blue or black. Next are some of my temples, which comes into play tapped, and they square 1. So Temple of Silence, which taps for white or black. Temple of Epiphany, which taps for blue or red. Temple of Deceit, which taps for blue or black. And Temple of Triumph, which taps for red or white. Next are some deserts. They also come into play tapped, but they also deal 1 damage to target opponent. So first is Forlorn Flats, which taps for white or black. Sour Springs, which taps for blue or black. Abraded Bluffs, which taps for red or white. And Eroded Canyon, which taps for red or blue. Next are Bounce Lands, which comes into play tapped. When they enter, they return a land you control to the hand. So first is Azorius Chancery. They also tap for 2 mana instead of just 1. So this taps for a white and a blue. Ragdoll's Canarium, which taps for a black and a red. The Mere Aqueduct, which taps for a blue and a black. And Bow Scouts, which taps for a red and a white. Next are some artifact lands. These are for synergies that I might have with the deck. Darksteel Citadel, which taps for colorless but has indestructible. Great Furnace, which taps for red. Fourth Whispers, which taps for black. Sea of the Sandor, which taps for blue. And Ancient Den, which taps for white. Just in case you don't know, because he says you may cast that card this turn. If you have any of your lands in the grave, you are unable to use him to bring them back because you can't cast your lands. The rest of the deck is just basic lands. So 2 mountains, 2 swamps, 2 islands, 2 plains. Next, I'm going to show off what I'm going to use to help accelerate my game plan. So first is Lotus Petal, which for 0, I can tap it, sacrifice it, and add 1 mana of any color. it's like a treasure that you can cast. It's really simple because with Silas Renn, I don't have to pay any mana to play it, so I can just swing, deal combat damage, juice it, and cast it. Next is Solwing, Commander Staple, cost 1, pay taps for 2, Manifold Key, which is in here mainly to help with mana acceleration, but can also give target creature unblockable for the turn. Arcane Signet, taps for any of my colours. It's command tower that you can cast. Farewell Stone, which can tap for any colour your land your opponent could use. Prize Statue, which when it enters or leaves, create treasure, so I can sacrifice it to get a treasure later on. Mana Stone, taps for colourless, and I can pay 1, tap it, and sacrifice it to draw a card. These two make it where your artifact spells cost 1 less to cast, and Joyous Familiar makes your historic spells 1 less to cast. So historic spells are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. So this is especially good because it makes both your commanders cheaper, but even if it just said artifacts, it would still make Silas cheaper because he's an artifact. Next is Storm Default, which whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure. And when at the beginning of your end step, if you control 5 or more artifacts, it turns into Vault of Calacan, which is his Tarlarian Academy, but with extra steps. So it taps for a blue equal to the amount of artifacts you control. Next is Tessera, Master of the Bridge. I put it in the mana section because of the static effect, where creatures and planeswalker spells you cast have affinity for artifacts, which means that they cost 1 less to cast for each artifact you control. He also says +2. He deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of artifacts you control. You gain X life. -3. Return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand. And 8. Exile the top 10 cards of your library. Put all artifacts from among them to the battlefield. Lastly is Smothering Tithe. Just so I could, just because it's Smothering Tithe, I am that kind of player. Next is card draw / acceleration. So first is Mischievous Bubble. This also costs it well. I can sacrifice it to look at top card of target player's library. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So I can just look at anyone's top card and draw a card. Next is Elseworld Flask, which for 2 draws a card when it enters, and I can sacrifice it and choose a basic land type. Each land I control becomes that type until end of turn. Ico Wellspring, which when it enters or leaves, I draw a card. Baleful Strix, it has flying and that touch, and when it enters, I draw a card. Joyra, she says whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. Like I said, historics are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. So, draws a card when I cast any of my artifacts or any of my other legends. I can't draw a card. I can't draw when I cast her because she needs to be on field. Imskir, he naturally has affinity for artifacts. And when he enters, I draw cards and lose life equal to half the number of artifacts I control rounded down. And I can pay 3 generic and a red and sacrifice an artifact. He deals damage to any target equal to the sacrifice artifact's mana value. So if I sacrifice like Joyous Familiar, he'll deal 4 damage. Next is with Invention. It's an X spell, so I can put any number of mana into the X and it becomes that big. So if I put because it also costs 3 blue, if I pay 6 mana in total, the X will be 3. It has improvise, so I can tap any of my artifacts to help pay for it. But it has to be for one generic. And I search my library for an artifact card with mana value X or less, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle my library. So using a Joy Familiar as an example again, I'd have to pay 7 mana in total to get it, because it costs 3 and it has X in the mana cost. Next is Consider, which has a fail 1 and draw a card. So fail means I look at the top card of my library and I may put that into my graveyard. Next is Enlightened Tutor, which searches for any artifacts or enchantment and then put it on top. Faithless Looting, which allows me to draw 2 and discard 2. Esposeno, which is similar to Smothering Tithe. I just realized I've not mentioned what Smothering Tithe does. What Smothering Tithe does is, whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a treasure. This says whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless that player pays X, but X is its power. Next is Baron Rivalry, which is Deadly Dispute. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw 2 and create a treasure. Next is Grab the Prize. As an additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card. So I draw 2, and if the discarded card was not a land, this deals 2 damage to each opponent. Next is Archwold Fiddlebender. It has Magical Tinkering, which I can pay a white, tap it, sacrifice an artifact, and I search for an artifact that costs 1 more than the sacrifice artifact. For example, if I sacrifice Foundry Inspector to it, I can get Joyous Familiar, because 4 is 1 more of 3. This can only be used as a sorcery. Next is Frantic Search, which is basically the same as Faithless Looting, but I get to untap up to 3 lands. Next is Fabricate, which searches my library for an artifact and put it directly into hand. Next is Lucio, Clockwork Scholar. It has prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. And whenever 1 or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. So, I've had this happen once. I was blocking with the Baleful Strix, and somebody with this out, the Baleful Strix dies, and the person was saying that it should still be alive, and then I say it says attacking artifact creatures. So make sure you read the cards because they explain the card. Felder Clan Archmages next. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, draw a card. It's basically Joyware, but just for artifact spells. Next is Doredes, Grab Saphon. It's also a planeswalker. It has +2. Discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. It has a -2. Sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And -10. You get an emblem with whenever an artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. Next is Reforce the Soul, which can be cost for cheaper if it's the first spell I do this turn. And it has each player discards their hand, then draw 7. So that's a way of getting my artifacts into the grave. Lastly is Bolus the Citadel. I may look at the top card of my library anytime, I may play lands and cast spells from the top of my library. If I cast a spell this way, I pay life equal to its mana value rather than pay its mana cost. And I can pay 10. I can tap it, sacrifice 10 non-land permanents. Each opponent loses 10 life. Nice, easy way of getting people lower in their life totals. Next are cards that have something to do with sacrificing artifacts or getting them back. So first is Chromatic Star. I can pay 1 and then tap it to sacrifice it and add 1 mana of any colour. When it's put into my graveyard from the battlefield, I draw a card. I'm actually going to talk about these 3 at the same time. So it's Mirror Retriever, Junk Diver, and Scrap Trawler. So what these 2 do is when they die, I return another target artifact from my graveyard to my hand. What Scrap Trawler does is whenever it or another artifact I control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, I return it to my hand a target artifact card in my graveyard with lesser mana value. So if this dies, I get to bring this back to my hand because 3 is less than 2. No, 2 is less than 3, I mean. Next is Etherworks Marvel. Whenever a permanent I control is put into a graveyard, I get an energy counter. And I can tap it, pay 6 energy counters, and look at the top 6 cards of my library. I may cast a card for free from among them, putting the rest at the bottom. Next is Croc Clan Ironworks. Just sacrifice an artifact, get 2 colorless mana. Next is Biblioplex Assistant. When it enters, I get to return an instant or sorcery from my graveyard to the top of my library. It may seem weird at first, but I'm going to show you a card later that makes sense in a way. Next is Mayhem Devil. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. Next is Shawoom, the Hegemon. It's a Digimon. When they enter the battlefield, you may return target artifacts from your graveyard to the battlefield. Next is Rocket Fire Reaver. When an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, he deals 1 damage to each opponent. Next is Sephine's Reclamation. It says return target opponent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. If this spell was cast from a graveyard, you may copy this spell and may choose a new target for the copy. Next is Ancient of the Iron Throne. It gives my commander creatures whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1, which is especially good if you're playing partners because it gives it to both of them. Next is Crown Novelist. It says whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Crown Novelist and add 1 red mana. And lastly, this is why I have the assistant in the deck, because if I have Croc Clan Ironworks and an artifact that taps for white, I can get 1 colorless every time. Next is some combat shenanigans. They're mainly 3 swords. So first is Sword of Frozen Future. The 3 swords give +2/+2 and protection from 2 colors. This gives protection from blue and black. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, so fail 2, then you may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard without paying the mana cost. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead. Next is Sword of Feast and Famine. This one gives protection from black and green. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card and you untap all lands you control. Nice and simple, gives you extra mana in a way. Last Lastly, for the swords is Sword of War and Peace. This gives protection from red and white. So that way, I'd have protection from all the colours in some way. Just so you know, because it says protection, I can't get something double strike with Bruse because it's both red and white. When equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, this deals damage equal to the number of cards in their hand to that player, and I gain 1 life for each card in my hand. Next is Enter the Enigma. It just gives target creature unblockable this turn, and I draw a card. Lastly for this bit is a Chroma Spell. I choose one. If I control a commander as I cast a spell, I may choose both. So I can either give creatures I control flying, vigilance, and double strike, and or lifelink, indestructible, and protection from all colours. Next is some interaction. So first is Soul Guide Lantern. I can, when it enters, I exile target card from a graveyard. I can tap it and sacrifice it to exile each opponent's graveyard, or I can pay 1, tap it, and sacrifice it to draw a card. Next is Permission Denied. This counters target non-creature spell, and my opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. Next is Dolphin's Veto. It can't be countered, and it also counters target non-creature spell. Next is Dispatch, which taps a creature, but if I have Metalcraft, which is if I control 3 or more artifacts, I get to exile it instead. Next is Counterspell. It counters the spell. Unwind. It counters a non-creature spell, and I get to untap up to 3 lands. Chaos Warp. The owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library, then reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it into play. Lastly for this is Rewind. It's unwind, but for any spell, and I untap up to 4 lands. Lastly are miscellaneous cards. This is its 4 cards left. So it's Servo Schematic. When it enters or leaves, create a servo. Sad Robot. When he enters, I search for a basic land card, put into play tapped, then shuffle. When he dies, I may draw. Goblin Roller. You can tap him, choose target artifact a player controls, and target artifact card in that player's graveyard. If both targets are still legal, as this ability resolves, that player simultaneously sacrifices the artifact and returns the artifact card to the battlefield. What this means is, if I have Chromatic Star and Mail Retriever, one in my grave if there's in my grave and Mail Retriever's on the field, I can sacrifice the Mail Retriever to get this back. And lastly is Enriching Microseth. This sends all non-opponents I control into artifacts. It's the same for permanent spells I control and non-opponent cards I own that aren't on the battlefield. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next video. See ya. Bye.